So we're getting to the home stretch of this workshop. I think we've heard a lot of really fantastic information. If you're thinking about interning or doing research abroad, also about the possibility of teaching abroad after graduation. So my name is Amanda Asquith. I am the Internship and Experience Manager here at Career Services. And I also work with students on occasion who want to work abroad, who are looking for opportunities perhaps outside of teaching. So I'm going to talk with you a little bit more about that today. This is obviously like a huge topic to discuss, so I tried my best to distill it down into some helpful points to share with you all. So this is just the start of the conversation, but hopefully there'll be some good pointers for moving forward if you're thinking about working abroad. Is anyone currently in the room thinking about maybe working abroad after graduation? Okay, so a few people. All right. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. So in general, just some good things to consider and think about before you embark on your journey abroad. So of course, as with study abroad or teaching abroad, it's really good to consider the region of the world that you may want to go to. There can be different customs and norms around working there. There also might be different visa requirements or different job market to think about, so that's good to consider. And of course, language skills. So there definitely are a lot of English-speaking countries, and there can be opportunities there. Or if you have other language skills that you want to flex, that can be something to consider as well. There's also the possibility, if you're really looking to learn a brand new language and hop right into doing that while working abroad, that's something you can think about too. What I really want to focus on with this thinking about working abroad is first and foremost professional focus. So what do you want out of your time working abroad? And then also thinking about what your desired objective is. So what do you want out of an experience working abroad? If there's skills that you're trying to learn or gain, whether it's language skills or other type of work skills, whether you're looking to make an income of some sort, or whether you are considering a certain period of time, short-term, long-term, whatever that might look like. In terms of your desired objective, it's really nice to think about, are you looking to immerse yourself completely in a brand new culture, and what does that look like? Or maybe you're taking a gap year between college and grad school and you want to travel some while also making a little bit of money. So those are all just considerations to keep in mind. So I'm going to start first with some ideas for temporary international work, and then I'm going to hop into considerations if you're thinking about maybe doing a career abroad or setting down some roots abroad for a little while, so some longer term options there as well. There are quite a few opportunities for temporary international work abroad, so this can be anything from a few months to a year to 2 years. The first couple I want to talk about is childcare and elder care. So one of the most popular options is au pairing abroad. Maybe this is something that we've heard about before, or it can be working with the elderly. A few points on that. So a lot of the options for doing temporary work, not necessarily the best paying, but with being working in a household, you do oftentimes get room and board included, which can be really nice, even if you're not actually making tons of money. There are agencies a lot of times that can set you up with different families. That can be nice. It's good to look into the agency though and consider if there's any fees or other stipulations around joining that agency. You can also try and find an au pair or elder care opportunity on your own. Just, it's a little more risky because you can't necessarily vet the people that you're reaching out to if you're doing it, across the internet. So there's pros and cons to both options. Depending too on what country that you may want to work in, there can be different levels of red tape in terms of getting the visa or getting the opportunity to work as an au pair or as a elder care worker as well. So I encourage you, if you're thinking about this option, consider the length of time that you might want to be spending abroad. That might help you narrow down maybe what family you might want to work with, or how long that someone might be looking for caretaker. Also consider as well, location again is very important. And even thinking about, do you like working with children? Do you like working with the elderly? Considering maybe how many kids you might be working with. If it's au pairing for 1 child versus 5, that can be a very different experience. So those are all just good things to keep in mind. Another really popular option if you're looking to work abroad, perhaps on a shorter term basis, is through being a tour guide. There are quite a few companies that hire tour guides. I list a couple of them here, so Kentucky, Bus About, Kiwi Experience, and they love having guides from all over the world, show people different places. This is a great opportunity to meet people from all over, and also to travel. One thing to think about with this option is it may be a little bit longer term. So if you're thinking you might just want to be somewhere for 6 months or so, they may want a little bit more time than that per se if they're hiring you to be a tour guide. So something to keep in mind. It also, again, maybe not the best paying option, but a lot of times it does include room and board in addition to some pay, which can be nice, and you get to travel, which is pretty cool to take into consideration. One of the newest and kind of coolest new trends in working abroad is being a digital nomad or freelance work. This is really work that you can do from a laptop. So you can be anywhere in the world and do this work, just as long as there's obviously a Wi-Fi connection. Any jobs along this lines can be doing graphic design, writing, consulting, doing programming, web design. So there's lots of ways to make this work. With this option, it's really nice because, like I said, you can be anywhere. The pay, depending, may not be as steady. So a lot of times this is taking on different projects and getting paid for those projects. If there's not any projects, that can be obviously a little sad because there isn't any money coming in, or if there's a steady stream of projects, that can be really great. Some ways to find these now, there are some job boards that do list virtual positions, remote positions. So sometimes those might be more set positions that you sign up for and you might get more steady work. Or there's also freelance job boards that you can look at that post different projects that you can do. Ones like Upwork and TopeTal that you can check out as well as an option. You also can work in the hospitality industry, short term. Lots of places hire workers in hotels, resorts, and on cruise ships. Now, these may not be the most glamorous positions ever. Can be things like bartender, ski instructor, maybe even house cleaning services. But it is a way to live in another part of the world and interact with lots of different people who are coming there to visit that resort. Bonus if you're on a cruise ship, because you actually get to travel all over as well. So this can be kind of a nice option. It's also a nice way to just gain some general skills. So if you want to travel and maybe get some general job skills, this can be a good way to go. Keep in mind that some of the work may be only seasonal, since it is a lot of times tourist funded and related. They may only need seasonal workers or people to work certain positions at certain times. Like if you're a ski instructor and it's not ski season, you may be a little bit out of luck. You may need to find an off-season job, or your position might be over at that point. So that's just something to think about with this type of work as well. So the last two options I want to share with you all for temporary international employment: volunteering. Volunteering is not always paid, but there are a lot of folks who really like to do it because they feel like they're doing good. There are options too, even if it's not paid, to get room and board for volunteering. One fun organization to say and to talk to you about is called woofing. So it sounds a little silly, but woofing basically is when you go and work on an organic farm somewhere in the world, and you do kind of farm work and sustainability work, and you actually get room and board for it. You don't necessarily get paid, but it's kind of a fun way, especially if you like to be hands-on and like to be out in nature, to gain experience that way. Peace Corps as well, if you've heard of Peace Corps, is also a great option to do volunteer work abroad. Peace Corps is actually paid, so that's a paid opportunity, maybe not, again, really high paying, but you do get money for it. You get placed different areas of the world for 2 years, oftentimes doing work related to education or healthcare of some type, and a lot of people find it really fulfilling and gratifying. We have the Peace Corps here on campus often recruiting and talking to students. They love UCSB. A lot of our UCSB students go on to the Peace Corps. And we actually do have an information session if you want to learn more about the Peace Corps in a couple weeks. That's happening on May 15th. So if you're thinking that could be an option for you for going abroad, that's something I encourage you to check out. One last option I want to share with you all that not everybody knows about are working holiday visas. These are especially really cool because they are aimed at you all. They are aimed at folks under 30. This is an opportunity to go to a country, so lots of different countries have them. Australia, New Zealand, Ireland have these options where you can get a working holiday visa. It's not really as tough to get this as other visas per se. And you can go to that country and you can find a position and work there for a limited amount of time. It does allow you to take any job in the country. However, depending on what country you're going to, there could be certain restrictions or limitations. So it's something I encourage you to look into ahead of time if you're thinking about this option. Essentially, a lot of times it leads to jobs that might be more temporary, seasonal, could be hotel work or front desk work or things along those lines. The cool thing though is you don't have to have a job set up before you go. You just need to have the working holiday visa. So you can just show up in New Zealand, footloose and fancy free, and then find a job while you're there. Oftentimes you can find jobs on local job boards, which I'll share more about how to find those with Going Global. Or even if you walk into like local hostels, they oftentimes have job boards where you can find postings for positions. So lots of good temporary international work options. I want to now get into talking about if you're thinking maybe longer term, I might want a career abroad. So some things to really think about with this option. Definitely do your research. It's good to do your research anytime you're thinking about working abroad, but especially if you want to develop a career abroad. Think about what jobs are available. What does the job market look like in a particular country? Are they hiring in the industry that you're interested in going into? It's really good to look at that information, that data, to get a sense of how feasible it's going to be for you to find a position wherever it is that you want to go. Do also consider what organizations hire international workers. So there are overseas companies that do hire international workers, so that's a good thing to keep in mind. And also there's a lot of US companies that have offices internationally, where a lot of times you can pivot into working in those offices. So some options for organizations that do offer jobs internationally would be through the federal government here in the US. So through, forgetting the name of the program, but through the federal government program where you can go and work at different embassies overseas, foreign service, that's it. Also educational institutions. So a lot of schools and colleges have overseas campuses where you can work. I worked with a student once who got a job at an educational institution working at a writing center somewhere in the Middle East, which was pretty cool. There's also a lot of international organizations, so international organizations like the UN, where you can get positions abroad. In addition to that, consulting firms oftentimes have international offices, as well as many nonprofits. So just some ideas of organizations that might be US-based that do offer abroad possibilities. I do highly recommend looking into what visa requirements are needed. That's one of the trickiest parts of working abroad. It's good to start early on that, considering what the visa process is, what you might need or might not need, and start working on that if you're thinking about working abroad. One thing that can be really nice is finding an employer who might be more supportive and able to help you through the process. This can just be helpful for a number of reasons, but they might be willing to give you some tips on the visa process or help you with relocation, maybe find housing. So some employers can be more supportive than others. So when you're doing your research, maybe talking to people, finding out more stuff online, that's a good thing to check in on. All right, so how might you find these longer term positions abroad? You can actually start with any just general job boards. So if you've heard of LinkedIn or Indeed.com, they do post international positions on there. So you can look at general job boards like that to start. I also really recommend using any network that you have. If you have studied abroad or you're going to be studying abroad, if you've traveled abroad, if you have family or friends who might be abroad right now or have been abroad in the past, reach out to those people. See if they know anybody who might be hiring, see if their company's hiring, work your network and see what options you can come up with. Do, of course, look at US companies who might be having positions abroad. So a lot of the international US companies, it may involve working in the US for a couple of years and then pivoting to a position abroad eventually. So that's something to keep in mind, but that is an option for eventually kind of getting to work overseas. And I do recommend too, a couple other things is to join any international professional associations. This is where you can meet people from all over the world. and you can hopefully network with them and build relationships and perhaps find opportunities. And do informational interviews. A lot of times folks are not really familiar with what that means. It's not really a job interview, but it's basically an interview where you ask somebody about what they do on a daily basis, how they found their position, what do they like about working abroad. There's definitely UCSB alumni who are abroad. We're going to hear from one in a little bit. And you can find folks on LinkedIn or through the Alumni Gaucho Network, and you can reach out to them and see if they might want to talk to you about their time abroad and how they got there. Going Global is a fantastic resource that we offer here through Career Services. Carol mentioned it a little bit earlier, so you can find it through Handshake. If you've hopefully been on Handshake before or familiar with Handshake, you actually can find it by going to the Career Center tab and hitting Resources, and it will be on there. You'll see my lovely face, and it will then, there's a link to click on. This resource is really cool for a number of reasons. First reason being it has country and global city career guides. So if you want to go to Portugal or if you want to find a job in Paris, you can click on that career guide through Going Global, and it gives you a ton of information. It will give you local job boards in that area, so you can click on those and you can look at those local job boards and find jobs that way. It will give you visa information about what that might look like, tells you how to write cover letters and resumes for a particular country or city you might be applying for, what financial considerations you should keep in mind. So there's a ton of really fabulous information on there. If you just want to go on there too and search for jobs, there's actually a job search function, also for internships as well. And you can just type in, let's say you're like, I'm open to anything, I just want to do like a marketing position somewhere in the world. You can type that in and see what pops up. So that's just a really fantastic resource I encourage you to check out if you're thinking about any of these options for going abroad. So some last considerations to keep in mind. It's really important with any abroad experience, interning, teaching, or working abroad, to be really mindful of the cultural customs and norms of where you might be working. Even with the job search process, resumes and cover letters can be really different at different places you're applying. You know, a lot of times here in the US, we have pretty straightforward resumes and cover letters. Other places, they want your picture on it, or they want you to list your marital status, things like that that are different than here. So it's good to kind of keep that in mind, and you can use Going Global to look up that information. Also, always effectively prepare for interviews, but again, consider who might be interviewing you, whether it's a US-based company, so they're already a US-based person, or an international company. It's good to be aware of that. There's different customs and norms around interviewing. I know here in America, a lot of times we talk about our individual accomplishments and achievements. Whereas in Japan, a lot of times they like to hear about how you've collectively worked as a team on something. So those are just good pointers to keep in mind. So go ahead and consider researching the customs and norms around whatever country you're thinking about going to. As Milan mentioned earlier, we do have some really cool resources here in the Career Resource Room. So I listed a couple books on here. Kiss Bauer Shake Hands, which is a pretty awesome book. And also Go Global is a really good one. Even too, so UCEAP has a international opportunities handout, and they have a whole section on there about kind of cultural considerations. So there's a lot of good resources to look at this and consider when you're thinking about going abroad, whether it's working, teaching, or interning. So we will move on to our live speaker, Brennan, a UCSB alum. So we're going to go ahead and pull him up.
Let me try.
Hello,
does this work now? Hello.
Yes, everyone can see you. Hi.
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for being here, Brennan. It's nice to see you.
I just saw the PPT, the PowerPoint that you had. I like how next to my name it said live in like
live,
big
yes.
letters.
Brennan, live.
It's like a show or something. Yeah. Hey, everybody.
Awesome. Well, we've got a good group here to listen to you today, and we've got some folks online as well. So I'm going to start off with just asking you a couple questions.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, awesome. So first, if you just want to generally introduce yourself and your college degree.
Okay, yeah, sure. Let's see. So my name is Brennan. I'm from the Sacramento area, and I studied in UC Santa Barbara. I had the pretty much full college experience. I lived in the dorms my first year. I lived in Ivy my second year. I studied abroad my whole third year, and then my fourth year I was an RA. And then a week after I graduated in 2015, I moved to Shanghai, China, where I've been ever since, except now because I'm on a business trip, but I live in Shanghai. Let's see, I studied linguistics with a Spanish emphasis. And because I know you might be thinking like, oh, you studied Spanish and now you're in China, but I studied abroad in Mexico City for my third year of college for the entire school year. So that's where I utilized that. Let's see, what else?
Tell us
That's
about
pretty much it.
work situation.
My current work situation. Okay, so I am working for an immigration company right now that helps Chinese people who want to move to the United States or Canada or Europe, and I help them with the visa process. So pretty much why I'm on a business trip right now is I travel around China giving presentations in Mandarin about moving to the United States and why it's a good idea for you and for your future and for your kids, why it's a good idea financially, what the process is like. Also, I do things like that for Caribbean countries, also for Canada and Europe and things like that. So right now I'm on a business trip in northern China. Like I said, I live in Shanghai, but if you're not super well known with Chinese geography, Shanghai's on the eastern coast of China in the more center part of. So if China were California, I'd be living in like where San Francisco is, kind of like that area of the middle. So right now I'm in northern China, just for the day. I got here yesterday and I'm flying back to Shanghai tonight. And so yeah, in a bit I'm going to go over to our business here, and I'm going to be giving a presentation about that's what I usually do about the US and stuff like that. It's pretty cool.
Very awesome. Thanks for sharing. So I'm curious if you could share how you found your job abroad, maybe how easy or difficult it was with your circumstances.
For sure. So I definitely didn't start working at an immigration company when I first came here. I, like many foreigners who are living abroad, I started out as a teacher. I was teaching kids and teaching adults, and I was working at a training center, which is basically when kids get out of school, they come to these training centers to learn. There's like math classes and music classes and English classes and Spanish classes and things like that. So I was working at a training center for about 2 years. And how I found that job was because while I was an RA, I'm sure as you all know, UCSB has lots and lots of foreign students. So one of my students when I was an RA was a Chinese student. And she was from Shanghai, and she would always tell me, oh my God, Shanghai's so cool. Shanghai's so awesome. It's so international. And I was like, come on, like how, here was me, not knowing anything about Asia or anything, like how international could China be? And then her mom came one time to visit from Shanghai, and she told me about her mom, and her mom is like this super international lady who she was born in Taiwan, but then she moved to Argentina when she was like 10 and lived there for like 10 years, so she speaks perfect Spanish. Then she moved to the United States and became a US citizen, so she speaks perfect English. And then they moved back to China to open a business and work. And so I met her mom. And so of course, I talked to her in like the teensy bit of Chinese that I knew because I was learning Chinese at UCSB. And I talked to her in Spanish, and then she's like, oh, what are you doing after graduation? I said, everyone asks you that question, but I was like, I don't know. I literally had zero idea. It was like March and I was graduating in June, and I was like, honestly, I have zero idea what I even want to do. I don't know what kind of work I want to get into. I don't know where I want to go. If anything, I'll probably just move back to Mexico City and I'll find a job there because I fell in love with Mexico while I was there. And she said, oh, well, I actually have a school in Shanghai. I was wondering if you'd like to come try it out for the summer. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I had learned a little bit of Chinese in school. And I said, well, if it's only for a summer, I might as well try it, I guess. So I was there for 2 months. And then she said, if you don't like it, feel free to go back to the States. And if you like it, you're more than welcome to stay. So I came originally for 2 months, and I'm here almost 4 years later. So I think that says how much I've enjoyed living in China so far. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Do you have any
No problem.
recommendations for others who are maybe looking to work in China or in other places abroad?
Yeah, for sure. I was listening to a lot of the things that you all were talking about during this presentation, and I really agree that doing your research is very important. China is incredible, incredible, incredible. And if you don't speak any Chinese, don't worry at all. Literally, I'd say like 90% of the foreigners who live here can say like ni hao, xie xie, and they can tell their Uber driver where their address is. That's it. But so not many foreigners actually can speak Chinese. I'm one of, I'm not that my Chinese is like super fluent or anything like that, but it's good enough to be able to work all in Chinese. I'm the only foreigner who works in my team in my company, so my entire job is in Mandarin, and it's a it's a huge challenge. Do not get me wrong, but I learn a lot. I can't. My Chinese would be way suckier, I guess, if I didn't have this job. Um, so sorry, that was totally off track. Getting back to what you were asking, getting back to what you were asking was, yeah, I would definitely think about where you want to go. China is amazing. Like I said, it's not for everybody. I had a friend from UCSB come out for the summer a few summers ago, and he was here for the summer. And at the end, he said, you know what, it's not for me. And then he ended up going back to the States. But that's totally okay. There's all these stories out there about, oh, living abroad changed my life and it's amazing. And if you don't like it, something's wrong with you. That's not true at all. Every place is completely different. And like I said, I lived in Mexico for a year and I worked while I was there. Working culture and living in Mexico City is completely different than working in Shanghai. Like so completely different. I just happen to be a very adaptable person. So I got used to eating rice and noodles every single day. So like, to be honest, when I don't eat rice and noodles every day now, I'm like, I feel kind of weird. Like, oh, like it's part of my everyday life, you know? So it just depends on how adaptable you are and where you want to go. For example, if you want to come to China, you could go to Shanghai, which is basically like the New York of China. It's so international. I have one American friend, and the rest of my friends, I have friends who are from Mexico, I have friends who are from Spain, from Russia, from Romania. I have a lot of friends who are Chinese. My partner is Chinese. I have friends who are from South Africa. I'm from all over Africa. So it's just so interesting how my friends are from all over the world. I think that's super cool. So of course, go do it. Of course, do it. Pursue it. Sorry, I have so much trouble like just getting straight to it. But do it. If you are at all, even a little teensy bit interested in working in China, feel free to contact me. I love talking to people. And I'm sure, as you can see, I could talk for hours and hours and hours about this, but I'm sure y'all don't have the time for that. So I'm going to try and, like control myself.
You're doing great. You're doing great. Just for one last question, do you have any general pearls of wisdom or last pieces of advice for our audience who are thinking about obtaining work abroad?
Hit me up. Yeah, so like I said, if you're interested in working in Mexico or Latin America, let me know. I have contacts there. If you're at all interested in China, let me know. I can hook you up here too. But if you're not interested in China or Latin America and that's not your thing, don't worry. Find somewhere that's your thing. Like I was trying to get at earlier, just because some people have amazing experiences in one place doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have that exact same experience. So find somewhere that you are passionate about or you're interested about learning more about the culture, learning more about the language, learning more about how life is there. Because I think that's what's going to give you that experience and give you that knowledge of, or that like beginning interest of, oh, I want to go here because, not just, oh, I just happened to end up here, which I mean, I didn't even follow my own advice that I'm giving you now because I ended up in China totally on a whim. But like looking back on it, that might have been a good idea. But yeah, I have so much to say. So really, if you're interested at all, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to talk to you one-on-one. I worked for EAP when I was when it was my 4th year in college, so I have tons of experience working and studying abroad as well. So if you're thinking about studying abroad even after graduation, or if you're thinking about working abroad after graduation, get my contact information, and I would love seriously to talk to you about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brennan. I'm going
Pretty
to
much it.
take you off now, but we really appreciate
No worries.
it so much. Give you a round of applause.
No worries. Thanks, everybody. And thanks for inviting me to this event. I'm very thankful.
Of course, definitely. Thanks for your thoughts. So I
No
may
problem.
help changing the screen. Yeah, I will share your contact information. Thank you.
Yeah, please do.
All right, awesome.